So, a few weeks ago, I put out a vote on 5 different colors, and let me tell ya, the vote was pretty close. However, some of y'all might be asking why I had this vote in the first place, or what these colors even mean. Well, it's because of a challenge idea I was given over on Tumblr, that being to only use units with the same hair color. That's right, the specific colors I put a vote on were actually just hair colors, though I obviously tried to hide that by saying things like brown and yellow instead of brunette and blonde. Since you guys voted for blue, I guess that means this challenge could work for most any Fire Emblem game, as all the lords have blue hair and pronouns. However, these specific groups were chosen from Fates thanks to Corrin's changeable hair color. You guys also managed to vote for the one group that was basically all girls, so there's that. With our army's hair color decided, it's time to see if we can beat Fire Emblem Fates Revelation with only blue-haired units. As we start off the game, we have to make our first important decision: Corrin's sex. Usually this is important if you want either Felicia or Jacob early, but in this case I chose male Corrin so I can add extra units to my army. The prologue is our first map and it's a little issue. The whole fiasco is entirely scripted. Same can be said for Chapter 1. Chapter 2 is where the problems start, and is the map I've been dreading the most. See, the game gives you your first actual units and expects you to use them. However, neither Felicia nor Gunter has blue hair, so I must abandon them. I tried this map a few times, but kept failing. I really wanted to try this map on hard mode, but things didn't seem to be in my favor. Though I had one more hope before giving up. I went back to creating my Corrin and changed my usual setup. Instead of making my boon strength, I would need a boon in defense for the chance to even survive Chapter 2. But not only that, I'd need a perfect level in my Chapter 1 fight. For my best chances, I'll want an increase in both HP and defense, though a bit of strength or speed could also help. However, even with that, it seemed this chapter was unbeatable. I tried to find a Corrin solo run of this chapter, but it seems people start off their solo runs after Chapter 5. And I can't rely on getting a crit, as the enemies are carrying brass weapons on my current difficulty. Funnily enough, this would be easier on Lunatic thanks to the enemies having better weapons. So, I swallowed my pride just to see if this map was even doable on easy. With the number of enemies reduced and now weaker, it was extremely easy to complete this map solo, but doing so left a bad taste in my mouth. I have no doubt this challenge is feasible on easy mode, but I want to experience this on hard, so I booted back up my hard file. Since this map doesn't seem possible to solo on hard, I choose to make use of Gunter and Felicia for backup and healing. This will put a massive asterisk on my whole run, as I attempt as much of it as possible on hard, but the prologue maps will be of questionable doability based on difficulty. With a bit of assistance, Chapter 2 becomes entirely possible by focusing first on Kaze and then letting all other units catch up to Corrin. With this major hurdle out of the way, it's time to move on to Chapter 3. This chapter was a lot easier to handle than the last, though it still took a few tries as I messed up towards the end of one of my attempts. Since I wasn't able to repeat that same level of luck, I eventually chose to let Gunter pair up with me, just so that the map would be completable, as I've already seen it's doable. We do almost fall to our death, but thankfully Lilith comes to save the day, and this is very much allowed in my arbitrary set of rules because, if you didn't notice, she has blue hair. Chapter 4 then comes as a breath of fresh air. Kaze comes with some vulnerary I can use, and Ryoma is a green unit here who will deal with most of the enemies himself. In fact, while doing this map, the Faceless preferred going after Ryoma as he had a lower defense than me. With the map easily cleared, we move on to the final tutorial map. Here we finally get our second usable unit, Azura. She's not the greatest unit, but she is a songstress, which makes her invaluable. By making use of her song, I'm able to attack twice per turn and easily handle the danger of worm slayers. I mean, at least I was fine. The others were less so, but they'll be revived after this map, so it doesn't matter. What does matter is that I spent a good while grinding levels on Azura. She's going to be our only other usable unit for a while, and as a songstress, she's not really meant to be a combatant. So I grind her up to level 20 by having her sing to me before finally finishing off the boss. With my buffed up Azura and Corrin, I come upon the path choice. While this challenge might be feasible for any path, I've chosen Revelation to have the most character variety and also because I hate Conquest and do not care for Yukimura. Our first battle along this path is rather simple, as our goal is just to defeat the commanders. The fun quirk with this map is that once you kill a commander, all units from their side stop their advance. So I move Felicia out of the way and have Azura and Corrin take out the Wyvern commander first. With the Wyverns no longer a threat, the Hoshidan commander was easily disposed of. Sadly, while killing the commanders did get my siblings' attention, it had the side effect of activating their Cain instinct. Not wanting to get my head bashed in, I swiftly leave. As I cannot be persuaded to join either side due to a lack of blue-haired pro-tags, Azura suggests the next best thing: jumping off a cliff. I decide to believe her because I know that anyone with blue hair is trustworthy. This pays off in somehow not actually killing us, and Azura gives us a lore dump. However, we're attacked by mysterious enemies. Purple enemies. They tarnish the name of us blue units by daring to be the horrid combination of blue with red. For their evil, we must smite them, and smite them we do. Usually, this map is for letting Azura and Felicia or Jacob catch up with you in levels, or helping Corrin grow if you didn't feed them all the experience. But in this case, Azura and Corrin are massively overpowered. That doesn't mean fighting all the enemies is pointless, though. I still clear the map for a different kind of experience: weapon proficiency and support ranks. There's also the added bonus of treasure, but it's not nearly as important as raising my supports with Azura as quickly as possible. When we get far enough in the map, we run into Gunter. However, I simply rob him blind because he doesn't have blue hair. Once all the enemies are cleared, we move on to the boss. Normally, I'd soften him up with some attacks from Felicia and Corrin on backup before sending Corrin in for a finishing blow. Doing so was the safest way to handle things when the boss deals massive damage and has a decent crit rate. However, doing so clearly isn't possible, as my only 2 units are single-range fighters at the moment. Luckily, Corrin gained the ability to transform into a dragon back in Chapter 5. By using a Dragonstone, they can enter a form with high resistance, though their attack will be somewhat pitiful due to their bane and magic. Still, it works well enough as it prevents the boss from being able to crit them, and they're able to take them down with Azura's help. Once we escape the bottomless canyon, I choose to enter a skirmish. I do this so as to grind some support levels on Corrin and Azura, as they're now at B rank together, and while they focus on befriending one another, I allow some Pegasus Knights to poke Felicia and Gunter to death, just to make sure I never use them. With only 2 cool units remaining, we head back to Hoshido, only for Yukimura to call us stupid and a disgrace to all pronoun havers. For this slight, we slaughter everyone in the fortress, rob them blind, and beat up Yukimura. Awed at our show of strength, Kaze and Sakura force themselves into our army, and much as I love Sakura, she has been banned from the premises for not having blue hair. As such, I send her and her retainers to their deaths while I grind some more support ranks with Azura. After the skirmish, I reach S support with Azura. This is the reason I played as male Corrin, as reaching S support with Azura allows me to unlock not only Corrin's child, but Azura's as well, and both of them will have blue hair. Much as I would love to have some kind of lesbian polycule, the game will not allow it, nor will it allow offspring to exist even if they allowed being gay with Azura. This now leaves me with a choice. I can collect my children to obtain 2 more units for my army, or I can push on with the story. Both tasks will be difficult as child paralogs are more balanced towards being played in the mid-game, meaning it would be difficult to survive. However, if I continue with the story, I won't get my next unit until the end of Chapter 10. I made a few attempts at Kana and Shigure's chapters, but it's just not happening at this point. With promoted enemies on the field, I'd either need more units or better stats to survive. So I move forward with the story. Chapter 9 is a battle of endurance. With winds blowing my units around, I have to be careful of my placement as I slowly chip away at the enemy in order to reach the boss. Luckily, my survivability is pretty good thanks to Azura's personal skill, healing Descant. At the start of every turn, allies in 2 spaces of her will heal 10% of their HP, so she's essentially my shitty healer for now. As I make my way through the map, I make sure to open the chests with a dual katana and some gold. The katana will be extra useful as it will allow Corrin more variability with the weapon triangle. Fuga himself was pretty easy to beat after the slog that was this chapter. A lucky crit took him down from full, preventing me from having to deal with any shenanigans from him. Oh, I guess Rinka also showed up this chapter. She's, dead. Since I'm coming close to obtaining Obro, I decided to continue on with the story. Chapter 10 isn't all that bad, it's just a case of slowly making my way through all the ice to gain pitiful amounts of experience and a ton of free items. This is also the point in the run where I just got in a Discord call so as to not lose my mind. I cannot possibly emphasize how hellish this was on the soul. Still, Zola was managed, and Leo showed up to tell us he doesn't yet believe in the existence of pronouns because he's evil right now. Despite his bigotry, he was at least kind enough to free my next blue-haired unit. That does not mean his inability to understand how language works due to transphobia is forgiven, though. I will not forget this slight. Now that I have Obro in my party for saving and then killing Takumi, I am officially up to 3 usable units. With this newfound power, I decide to take another stab at the child paralogs. With a bit of a change to my strategy and some newfound assistance from Obro, I was easily able to complete Shigure's paralog by rushing the boss, bringing me up to 4 usable units. Thanks to him being my son, he has really good strength and defense growths, making him an invaluable Pegasus Knight for the team, not to mention his good starting resistance. With my decent team, I thought it might be possible to take on Kana's paralog, and I did indeed make it pretty far. However, she wandered too far outside of her protective moat and got herself killed on some of the more powerful reinforcements. If I'm to recruit her, I'll either need a healer or some more units to help handle the enemy quickly. I considered doing some level grinding for a moment, but I realized that Shigure has the major problem of being my son and thus being weak to worm slayers. I hate this household. I also got to see the funniest thing in this moment where an enemy spawned on one of the allied deployment tiles. I don't know how this happened. Giving in to my fate, I press on with the story to obtain Reina. If anything, I believe it will be possible to obtain Kana with just a little bit more help, and Reina seems perfect for the job. Ignoring the timeline where Reina gets herself killed on an archer, I was easily able to recruit her by going on a road trip with Shigure. It's great having a child who can drive you places. Orochi died before I could talk to anyone, but that doesn't exactly matter. I did, however, get to rob Saizo blind before he was killed. Seeing as this is a route the enemy map, I decided to regroup all my units and try to pick off small groups of enemies on the map. This went pretty well until aggroing one enemy to the west caused all enemies over there to start making a mad dash toward me. Things looked dire, but a bit of luck got me through the encounter alive, and I managed to clear this side of the map. The eastern side of the map was much easier to deal with as the enemy didn't all attack together. Thankfully, the Master Ninja on this map provided enough experience for Corrin to reach level 20 and reclass to a Hoshido Noble. While I normally prefer the Norn Noble, I was clearly using Corrin as a physical tank and not a magic tank. Not to mention I needed a healer. I've certainly gone longer without one in randomizers, but it's a bit harder to disperse damage among fewer units, so this was a welcome change. With my souped-up Corrin, I can easily clear the boss and defeat the remaining enemies. Now that I have 5 units at my disposal, I decided to once again make an attempt at Kana's Paralog, and it was thankfully enough to finally get by, mostly due to Reyna's bow quickly removing of the flyers, who had been the biggest issue in the past. With the Paralog completed, I now had 6 units, and with Kana's good magic stat, she was already looking to be a better dragon tank than Corrin. Chapter 12 ends up being the perfect testing grounds to see how well Kana holds up in battle, and she certainly doesn't disappoint. She even had the strength to take down her aunt with little issue. The actual boss of this chapter isn't much to write home about, because while Flora is super beefy here, her personal skill can't cause any problems due to my units mostly being locked to one range. For completing this chapter, we get Baruka. And while I do love Wyvern Riders, she has the issue of joining us at level 9 because unit balance is completely fucked in Revelation. Still, we push on to chapter 13, where Corrin hallucinates their dead sisters worrying over some furries. They sadly succumb to their wounds as Sakura has been dead for weeks and thus no one actually healed them. As for handling this map, while it is a defeat the boss chapter, I took my time to clean up all the units, except for Xander, Ryoma, and Scarlet. Doing so provided enough experience for Shigure and Kana to reach level 20 and promote. With both my children now able to use staves, I finally had the chance to reclass Corrin to a hero so they can act as a better attacker to support the team. As we move on to Port Dia, we are met by Elise. For some reason, she seems happy to force herself into our army, despite the fact that we have very clearly killed Camilla. She obviously pays for this lack of forethought with her life. More importantly, Obro finally reaches level 20 here, so she promotes to a Spearmaster. Since this is a Rat the Enemy map, I take my time going through it to feed as much experience to Baruka as possible, so she can finally catch up. This works out as she manages to climb all the way from level 13 to 20 during this chapter. As it turned out, the boss here was some guy named Silas who claimed to be our best friend, but I would never befriend a person without blue hair, so he is obviously killed for his crimes. With Baruka promoted to a Wyvern Lord, my team is now made up of entirely promoted units. Seeing as we're so strong, we push ahead to meet the Rainbow Sage. There's nothing really of note here other than Shura dying and Nyx mercifully surviving due to being a green unit standing in the corner. I guess the Yada gets upgraded here as well, but we otherwise march on to the chapter 16-17 Gauntlet. Chapter 16 is where we get the last of our Hoshiden allies, with Setsuna being the only one to matter. Since she joins us at level 11, we use the chapter as a moment to grind levels on our beloved archer, while the last of the Hoshiden royalty is beaten to death. I also find it extremely funny that Scarlet talks about finally getting to fight together, only to have to fall back for now. She understands it's not her time to die. Yet. As for Setsuna, while she does join at a level that usually makes her pretty worthless in Revelation, she actually holds up pretty well. I know she isn't considered a great archer in this game, but they managed to give her enough strength to put a decent dent in most enemies on this map, needing little to no help beyond healing. I don't quite get her to level 20 here, as dealing with the flame cycles for too long could end up backfiring if I'm not careful. Once Hans is defeated, we're immediately thrown into chapter 17. It starts off pretty rough, as you're normally supposed to charge through the eastern side of the map with Xander. However, the Norian Royals aren't who we're here for. It's Perry, and she almost dies as soon as we get her. Luckily, she manages to scrape by, preventing me from having to start over from chapter 16, but such a close encounter forced me to be more careful. With the Norian royal bloodline ended, I was able to focus on funneling experience towards Setsuna and Perry. My other units acted as decoys to lure and weaken enemies for my 2 base units to finish off. And much as I would have loved to shove Perry in the line of fire like the cavalier she is, she starts off with pretty poor stats when you get her. Still, the experience funneling worked, and I managed to promote Setsuna to a sniper during this map. I didn't have an extra Master Seal for Perry to use, but she did end up reaching level 20 around the same time. The only real issue here after the rocky start was Iago, and he was easily handled by Shigure and Azura thanks to their resistance and strength. With the map cleared, we get to see two dead guys shake hands and return to the astral plane. While I would have loved to have a paladin, I ended up promoting Perry to a great knight to try and fix her poor stats. As it becomes clear that the ghosts of Corrin's former siblings continue to haunt them, they choose to jump into the bottomless canyon. In this moment, Scarlet, who had refused to die earlier, is now finally allowed to die for plot reasons. After finally mourning the death of someone, Corrin takes up arms in the first proper Vala map. Normally you're supposed to split up your team to take out the various enemies scattered across the map so you can use the 8 dragon veins to open the way to the boss. I say normally because instead I chose to keep most of my units together. I sent all my land units to the west in order to take care of the map from left to right, while my flyers worked on chipping away the enemy on the eastern part of the map. Getting each of the dragon veins was fairly easy, and handling the enemies in the boss's little box was even simpler. After that, Shigure and Azura were easily able to take out the boss. Up next, the escape map. And there's not much to say here. I only brought along Kana, as she's a great tank, and was easily able to make my escape. We also meet a child, but it's clear he's untrustworthy because, look at his hair. That's the hair of a liar. Chapter 20 is another Dragon Vein based map. In this case, it's using the Dragon Veins to move bridges around in order to access various floating isles. While I could have tried to make a beeline for the boss in this chapter, I chose to make a slight detour. Even if this is a defeat the boss map, I wanted to collect all the chest keys to collect various treasures. I wasn't sure if all of them would come in handy, but there were good weapons to pick up just in case, especially the Dragonstone Plus to add even more options to Kana's arsenal. There's very little that caused issues on this map. The greatest danger we ran into was probably all the flying units, but they were easy enough to take out with some baiting strats in Setsuna, making this a walk in the park. Corrin then follows the clearly untrustworthy child into a trap. However, they pulled an Uno reverse card to reveal that this was in fact a trap to catch the child in his devious ways. For his crime, he is made into a faceless. With this comes one of my favorite maps in Fates, if not the entire series. The gimmick here is that there are red and blue floors. Red floors will set an enemy unit to an advanced class, while blue floors set them to a base class. The best way to handle this map is by having certain units who can tank various physical or magic attacks, luring enemies onto blue floors. Usually I would make use of Kana and Oboro as my lures here due to their high defense and lack of a weakness to bows. And despite Shigure having higher resistance, Setsuna made the best magic tank due to her high avoidance. With a dual Yumi equipped, she was easily able to handle any mages. As for the boss, he's just a beefed up faceless. The biggest issue one might run into is his ability to freeze any opponents he hits. It doesn't exactly matter though, as I'm easily able to one-round him. Chapter 22 is up next, and it's not necessarily hard, but you do start off in a pretty rough position. There are enemies who will rush you from both sides, so I had to huddle up my party as they closed in before fighting my way out. Once I had a decent foothold, I started traveling to the bottom of the map to follow the path towards Arete. Though I ended up going rather slowly, so I chose to burn a few turns in the bottom left corner. This allowed the final wave of reinforcements to appear, being a group of Kinshi Knights. Luckily, I was prepared for them with my advantageous position. Once the reinforcements were handled, it was just a matter of pushing my way towards Arete and seizing the fortress. Upon clearing the chapter, Flora joins my group, thanks to the level 3 shuriken launcher I'd built in my castle. She's the 10th and final blue-haired unit to join my army, and she's the first proper healer. But more importantly, she's a dagger user, meaning I can finally have a debuffer on my team. With my team now complete, we run into Scarlet's corpse, seeking vengeance. She's not an issue when Setsuna exists. The only other thing of note was nabbing a spy's Yumi off of one of the snipers. While Setsuna wasn't quite yet at bow rank A, she'd be there soon, and having an option of 3 range is always good. With that small detour over, we push our way to Arete and take her down. She expresses her gratitude for Azura embracing the life of blue hair and pronouns before dying. Again. Up next is one of my favorite cutscenes in the game, and Corrin does something unheard of. Choosing to trust someone without blue hair. Now, it is possible to sneak through this map to gain extra rewards. However, I don't have a unit with lock touch, so I have to kill the guards for door keys. This is fine though, as it means more free experience for my units. Upon reaching the end of the map, Corrin reveals that their trust for Mikoto was just a ruse before taking her down. We then get the revelation about our relation to Azura that Aias continually tries to sweep under the rug and write out of existence. Choosing to ignore the implications this has on Corrin's relationship with Azura, we move on to one of my least favorite chapters. The big issue here is figuring out what my teams should be, as there are 2 lifts that provide access to each section of the map. Since each lift only has 6 spaces in them, I chose to set up my team with my major defensive players to the south and everyone else to the north. While it is possible to shove everyone on one lift using pair-ups, I take this approach so I can immediately make use of dual attacks and to provide more maneuverability, as it's already limited enough. By having Corrin and Kana hold up a defensive position in the doorway, their lift is frozen, giving time for the northern team's lift to reach the center area as well. By taking this approach, I'm able to attack the enemy from both sides while regrouping my party to plan out the next move. Once the center dragon vein is dealt with, I send a group of resistance-based units onto the southern lift. They clear out the southern part of the map and easily take care of the southern dragon vein. Just as before, they regroup in the center of the map. A few of these units would join in a more defense-based team that would take on the northern lift, while the rest would wait outside the door to said lift. Thanks to Corrin's high defense, along with their dual katana, they are able to act as a wall for the northern enemies to get themselves stuck on. Shigure and Baruka would act as support with their rally skills, while Oboro and Setsuna would pick off any low-health enemies stuck before Corrin. Once the area was safely cleared out, I had everyone exit the lift so the rest of the party could join them. From there, it was a bit of cleanup along with using the final dragon vein. Doing so unlocked the way to Sumeragi, though the snipers around him would be an issue for all my flyers. I was luckily able to bait away all his ads to pick them off before handling Sumeragi himself. By forcing him to be the first to attack, he ends up having his strength and being surrounded by my units. From there, it was beyond easy to defeat them. We swiftly move on from our act of patricide to face Anankos. It's here that we're accused of being a traitor who killed off all non-blue-haired units in the army. However, with their smarts, Corrin is able to figure out that Gunter has been the sus one among us after having seen him vent, or something like that. Sadly, before we could vote him off, Gunter took to battle. This map isn't really hard, as Corrin and Azura have wards around them, which heal anyone on them and provide large amounts of avoidance. The biggest issue is how many enemies have high movement. As such, it's necessary to take this map at a reasonable pace while avoiding attracting too many enemies at once. Once Gunter is reached, he is easily debuffed by Oboro before Corrin lands a finishing blow. Doing so causes Gunter to come to his senses before dying. Despite Gunter being the imposter, Corrin hallucinates their dead sisters healing the dying old man, which is to say he's almost definitely bled out and died. Ignoring his body, we jump into chapter 27. Normally I'd bum rush this map, but considering I have fewer units than normal who are of questionable power, I choose to pull back. Doing so worked out as we cleared a path to Anankos. It didn't take much to defeat him, but this was just the prelude to the real boss fight. The final form of Anankos has 4 health bars that must be depleted. With my limited strength, I chose to keep the party grouped together, taking out 1 health bar at a time. The right claw was first to go, followed by the left claw. From here, it was a matter of focusing on the face. Since Anankos did massive damage, and there was still 1 more phase after this, I chose to limit the units in his attack range. Only Korn and Obero stood there, as they could survive his attacks, with others healing them from afar. With this being the end, I used any units I deemed useless at this point as meat shields against reinforcements. Perry was the first to go before Nonkos destroyed himself on Obero. In a precarious position, I decided it was time to go all out. Everyone would attack to try and one-round Nonkos, whether or not they survived the attempt. Setsuna was first to attack, doing some decent damage, followed up by Reina and Baruka, who died horrible deaths. The next was the unkillable god known as Shigure, leaving Nonkos at 4 HP. All we needed was one final blow. So, attack I did.
I'll do my best. Me too.
With that, Nonkos was dead, and the run finished. Korn hallucinated a bunch of people at their coronation, claiming Nonkos' place. So basically all our progress has been undone with a new Mad Dragon. Azura probably ran away with the kids. I wouldn't know, she hasn't been seen in months. But that's beside the point. Can you beat Revelation with only blue-haired units? Sort of. If you only count from the Branch of Fate or play on normal, then yes, it's 100% possible. Otherwise, it's pretty questionable, unless someone can complete Chapter 2 on hard using only Corrin. Would I recommend this run? Maybe. Though, probably do more research than I did and possibly choose a different hair color if you do so. You know what? Please don't do this. Not unless you have people around to keep you sane. I played like half this challenge while in a VC with friends. We ended up coming up with some fanfic about this run the whole time. I don't think we kept hold of our sanity, least of all me. I'm sorry to the homies. Y'all know who you are. Whatever the case, I hope y'all enjoyed my descent into madness. If you wish to further destroy me, feel free to harass me with a stupid challenge idea in the comments below or on my Tumblr or something. Gods know I'll be stupid enough to try. Late breaking update. The reviews are in, and the Discord says that you should absolutely do this run, though please take our suggestions with a grain of salt. We're all just fanfic writers. I wouldn't will this on my worst enemy.